Hello, welcome to episode 13 of the Housing Sector Podcast, Behind the Spin. In this podcast, we know that people on social media promote a version of themselves which is a polished version of themselves. They use filters to make themselves better looking. Not on this occasion. They use filters to make themselves better looking. They eat better food. They are better husbands, better wives, better parents who have better holidays and spend more time with their kids who are better than anyone else's kids. We know that this isn't quite the true version, and when we know these people, we definitely know that this isn't the life they're perhaps leading. The same applies for housing associations. So as a resident, we know when they're failing, we know when we're living in a damp home, we know when service charges are going up. So it leaves a bit of a bitter taste in the mouth when we see our providers celebrating online that they are great community leaders, that they are supporting the government's initiative to build much needed homes, when they are celebrating how much joy they bring to other people's lives through the noble work they're doing. Now, as the divide grows between provider and associations, housing associations, as it grows, because you're running out of money, let's face it, providers are running out of money, they're going to have to cut more costs, they're going to have to reduce more services, and yet our service charge is going up, it's time for us to start being a bit more honest. It's time for us to show a bit more integrity. Perhaps honesty is the best way. Perhaps by being honest, we can overcome some of the pushbacks and hurdles from residents. Here at the housing sector, it's about bridging that gap. So in this episode, we're going to look at section 106. I'm going to explain why that's important and why that feeds into a press article in which I was misquoted. And the reason I was misquoted is because the press have their own narrative that they have to spin. And if you don't give them the sound bites or the bit of text that they want to put in there that helps promote that narrative, then they'll either not add you into the story or they'll misquote you. We're then going to look at a press release from Hexagon, or a release to their residents at least, and we're going to look behind that release and find out what the truth is and why honesty again could have been a better approach for Hexagon Housing. We're going to look at some of the financial troubles of a couple of housing associations and ask, how are they going to manage this online? What information are they going to provide to their residents to help quell the fears or to get them on board to know that they're all in it together and it's a journey that they're all on together? Then we're going to look at some internet integrity and ask, are these leaders, are these people who are advising boards, they're not being particularly trustworthy online? What sort of repercussions can we expect of that? Look, there's all that and more on episode 13 of the Housing Sector Podcast, Behind the Spin.
Housing Sector Podcast, episode 13, Behind the Spin. For those of you who don't know, Section 106 is a part of UK planning law. It allows local councils to require developers to provide certain benefits to the community when they build new homes or commercial properties. This usually means that developers must include a specific number of affordable housing units in their projects or contribute money towards local facilities, like parks, schools, or transport improvements. Essentially, Section 106 is a way to ensure that when a developer profits from building in an area, they also help support the community and meet local housing needs. It's important because it helps create balanced neighbourhoods where everyone can access affordable homes and essential services.
Okay, so that's section 106. Now, what builders are struggling to do is to sell these properties to housing associations. And the reason they're struggling to do that is housing associations like to build their own homes because they build their own homes as the profit arm of their not-for-profit. So by building houses, let's say we build 250 houses down the road. First of all, we get all the government grants for that. We get all the subsidies for that. We get the good press. Hey, we're building homes. We get the government support. Hey, we're on target. We're going to build all these new homes. And it feeds into the not-for-profit. So I'm not calling people out. This is not a bad thing. We've got Stigma, Places for People, A2 Dominion, even my own provider, GSA. They feed their not-for-profit. They fund it by building new homes. There's no harm, no foul in that. That's the way it is. But private builders, construction firms are going, well, hang on a minute. I have to adhere to Section 106, and yet you're not buying these homes. So what's starting to happen is these builders are going, well, why don't we set up our own for-profit in which we can build these homes, make them affordable, charge that service charge, sell it off for dilapidated stock at the end. And this feeds into What would you do with millions? Well, if I had billions, I'd invest in AI and emerging technologies and space exploration. And that's just me. Grew up watching 2001: A Space Odyssey. Had my mind blown at the age of 5. I don't think it ever went back together. Next thing I'd look at would be care homes. There's clearly an ageing population, and as this population of old people grows, we need care homes for them, and the infrastructure is just not there in the UK. So I would build big, 500 homes, care estates, where you have your own private flat and then move in through the process. We know, statistically anyway, that the average lifespan once you enter a care home is 3 to 18 months. So have flats that they can be supported in. This is a new model. These are happening. And then they progress through our care system until they inevitably move off this planet. So I would invest in care homes. I would also be looking at investing in homes. There's a government out there that is desperate for new homes, a country that needs new homes. We can take advantage of all the grants. We can then sell these homes as the ones that are private, and the ones that we have left, we can then manage. We keep the homes on our stock book. They're part of our stock. We then provide or charge a service charge and provide the upkeep of that. And if we build quality homes, then we don't really have to worry about much upkeep. If we build them right at the beginning, then 30 to 50 years they might need some upkeep. But by then, if they're shared ownership and people are happy in their homes and it's affordable to do so, they would have staircased up. So then the repairs become their lookout. And then once they get to the end of that, they can either sell it back to us to go into our care system, or they can leave it to their kids to inherit their homes and sell it that way. But ideally, we've housed them from birth, cradle to grave. That's what I would do if I was a billionaire. So if I was a builder and I have to build an estate with 250 homes and a percentage of those homes need to be socially affordable, then why not create a subsidiary that maintains these buildings and manages them and makes profit? Now, I don't necessarily, again, think this is a bad idea, because as I've said in the past, and don't take my word for it, go back to episode 6, I think it was, is to succeed to fail, where I suggested that, perhaps we need some oversight. If you've got a board or a CEO that doesn't have to show accountability to invested shareholders who have a financial investment in the well-being of the company, perhaps that's why so many of them are failing. There just isn't that oversight. They don't have to put their head on the chopping block and go, well, I'm sorry, I've squandered your millions. So I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I do think it's inevitable. So whilst I sit on the fence about, look, it shouldn't have got to this, the social housing should be managed by housing associations who should have been able to do it. They should have been able to manage stock. They should have been able to maintain it. They should have been able to keep escalating costs down. They should have been able to have managed their stock. They should have been able to manage their repairs. And they shouldn't be selling off dilapidated homes. But they are. So many of them are failing. Look at the housing ombudsman. There are so many failing. There are so many upset customers that perhaps a private entity is what we need. Perhaps we need that money to make it right, to build quality homes at the beginning so we don't have constant repairs and damp and mould and windows don't fit and not fire regs and cheap cladding. Perhaps we can remove all of that by putting it on the shoulders of the private investors into the private sector. But as I say, I sit firmly on the fence on that. So when I was contacted by Keith Cooper, he's an independent journalist, and I was asked to talk about this, I did. So you can only imagine my horror when I was misquoted.
Misquoted and Misrepresented.
On the 17th of September, I had a 14-minute call with Keith Cooper, who's an independent journalist. Now, as an independent journalist, I assume that he can see, such as the iPaper, online, lots of online publications, go, we want a news story about this. Or perhaps he's going, right, actually, that's a story that's relevant. I can probably sell that on. And look, everyone has to make their money. This isn't knocking Keith for making money. He has to earn a living. Now, obviously, the narrative that wants to be controlled, and there's a lot of narrative controlling, and I don't want to sound like one of these internet loons by going, mainstream media and all of that. However, it is becoming more and more prevalent. So the mainstream media, though you'd think would be all up in arms about the report of Grenfell, kind of silenced off, didn't it? It disappeared. And even then, they were very much focused on cladding. And I've spoke to a few journalists, including journalists from the BBC, who said, what issues do you have in cladding? I said, look, it's not just cladding. There are other safety issues. We have black mould. When young Anwar died, the press was all about black mould. When Grenfell happened, the press was all about fire. And now it's cladding. And cladding seems to be the one that they're stuck on. Earlier on, when I was talking about my own social housing activism and the trouble I had with my own landlord, Green Square Accord, a BBC journalist was very interested in the story. However, said, unfortunately, it was all focused on the post office at that time. So there is a narrative within the mainstream media. And I think the government pushing for new homes, this is where you start to sound like a conspiracy nut. I think the government pushing for new homes, the mainstream media isn't focused on reporting the true state of social housing. Now, Keith spoke to Suze from Shank, and we all know and love Suze here. And this proves, again, that people can have a difference of opinion. Doesn't mean they can't be friends. So Suze was interviewed by Keith for this, and she too was published in the magazine, or the online article, I should say. Susan Munner, co-founder Social Housing Action Campaign, a network of housing workers, activists and tenants, said the idea of house builders setting up for profits was absolutely going in the wrong direction. Allowing construction firms to set up social housing arms will only magnify the problems of poor service and normalise the profit motives we are already seeing in the social housing sector, she said. They are profit-driven builders. They won't care about keeping rent levels or service charges at an affordable level. Now, my pushback on that to a certain extent is I don't think the not-for-profits are keeping rent and service charges in line. There's going to be a podcast hopefully later today about my own landlord and their latest increase, and how we suddenly owe them £1,000 because they've mismanaged everything. Anyway, let's get on with this, and I can get that one out today. So I think we've already failed. I think Susie's right. I agree with her partially. I think she's right. But as I just said to you in the previous bit, I'm kind of on the fence. I think it's perhaps a necessary evil. So look, I'm quoted as saying, fears of mediocre repairs and dilapidated homes. Ben Jenkins, a housing activist who advises tenants through his housing sector website, fears developer-run affordable housing providers could exploit government funding regimes. They could take the funding and grants to build new homes, do mediocre repairs, and then sell the properties off 10 to 15 years later when they come dilapidated. This is happening. I said to Keith in the interview, when we discussed over the phone, I said, this is happening. I accused, as I have done on my Is to Succeed to Fail, as I have vocally done in the past many times, I said, look, housing providers exploit government funds. They then provide substandard repairs, and when the home is no longer financially viable, they sell it off. My fear isn't that the private companies are going to do this, the privately funded companies. They probably will. But I said this is already happening. And then I went on to explain why I thought it might be good to get some private money in. But this article wasn't about that. That wasn't the narrative that Keith was employed to spin. So it's unfortunate that I was misquoted. Let's see what happens. Can I get it retracted? Doubt it. It's already out there, isn't it? But let's put it on the record here on the housing sector, where we do tell the truth. I think that's happening already. I think we're already exploiting. We're already being exploited, and I don't think the private builders are going to do any worse or any less. I think they could do better when it comes to building homes, because it's in their interest to build quality homes, whereas current housing providers are building them too cheap. Governments and councils are going with the cheapest quote so they can get new homes thrown up, and that just delays the problem, because in 10, 15 years' time, we have homes that aren't fit for purpose. Our home, our block of flats, is so run down through neglect from our landlord, Green Square Accord. And our service charges are going up, and due to issues with the lease, many people can't resell them, can't sell their share. So I think it is being exploited. And that was when I said to Keith, I didn't say that I thought necessarily that the private sector was going to do that.
The Hexagon message. A convenient omission?
Hexagon Housing, a housing provider who stayed largely off my radar. Let's have a look at a message that was posted by their head repairs, Simon Watts. Not calling out Simon Watts for this. I suspect this was this was a very carefully worded statement that was released for the attention of their residents. I suspect it was written by a team of people. There are at least 2 or 3 other people involved in this. A communications expert, certainly their legal team, and Simon Watts had to put his name to it. Very difficult position to be in. I don't envy him for that. So on the 24th of September, this is a statement that Hexagon Housing published on their website.
Hexagon's approach to responsive repairs is changing. We know that we need to invest more in improving our properties long-term and less on patch repairs. We have therefore taken the difficult decision to put on hold certain repairs that do not present a health and safety risk and could be better undertaken on a planned maintenance basis. These works will be pulled together into separate planned projects, which can then provide better value for money for our residents. We hope to be able to offer local contractors the opportunity to quote for these works. Works which are not of an urgent nor health and safety nature will relate to such jobs as roofs that are not leaking, decorative damage, fencing, communal repairs, external works, rubbish clearance, minor improvements. Most normal day-to-day internal property repairs will not be affected. Thank you for your understanding whilst we reset our repairs service. We will provide further updates in due course. Simon Watts, Head of Property Services.
As you can see, that sounds perfectly reasonable, doesn't it? Okay, so we've got a problem with repairs. We need to refocus and rethink how we deal with repairs. And perhaps to get rid of a backlog, if we can ignore some of the noise, broken fence panels, unkept gardens, communal, some of the noise, let's not focus on that. Let's focus on the real issues, the big issues, the health and safety issues. Get that backlog cleared, and then we can start to pick up some of the slack that we've let go here. Seems fair enough, doesn't it? Seems very reasonable. It's nice to see a housing provider coming forward and going, we're failing here, we're struggling here, we need to let you know that we can't cope. We're going to have to put this on the back burner so we can address this, and then we're going to come back to that. There's no apology about it, but it's kind of like, look, this is what's going to happen. So you set out your statement, you set out your template, this is where we are, this is what's happening, here's how we're going to deal with it. I like that approach. This is what we need. This is what I talk about, honesty that's needed within the online world of housing associations. You need to let your residents know. Your residents can understand. Perhaps. There's always going to be some vocal lot that don't. But a majority of your reasonable tenants are going to go, okay, that makes sense. Let's go with that. However, that's not the whole story, is it? Let's look at a press release on their own website from Providence.
Statement from Darren Tancred, Managing Director of Providence Building Services Limited. 15 August 2024. The final date for payment is not optional. Court of Appeal decides unanimously in favour of Providence Building Services, Ltd. The recent litigation between Providence v Hexagon has seen Providence Building Services being forced to sway from its core values of working alongside its clients to achieve a mutually successful project for the client, the project consultants and its subcontractors. The process, since 18 May 2023, has been damaging for the business, but we remained certain that our interpretation of the contract clauses was correct. The 3 Court of Appeal judges agreed with us and found unanimously in Providence's favour, reinforcing Lord Denning's famous message that cash flow is the lifeblood of the construction industry. Despite assertions made in recent publications, this simply was not a case of contractor being trigger-happy. It was a warning to employers, who have only a few fundamental obligations, and with payment in accordance with the contract condition being one of them. In this case, the employer, Hexagon Housing Association, cynically and persistently ignored their payment obligations whilst expecting Providence to continue to perform its obligations to its full extent. Hexagon's actions left Providence with no alternative but to revert to the contract and to terminate its employment with Hexagon, following 21 late payments beyond the final date of payment. It should be noted that Hexagon had already granted themselves additional time to make payments from the JCT 2016 contract by amending payment terms from 14 to 28 days. When the matter of persistent late payment was brought to the attention of Hexagon and their team, along with enacting other remedies, it simply fell on deaf ears. This was particularly frustrating when in the time of industry decline, when ensuring that your supply chain was paid on time to ensure it was fed and watered with utmost importance to us. Hexagon took a different view on the importance of this time and time again. Subsequently, Providence was left with no alternative and took the difficult, nuclear decision to terminate their employment under the contract, to ensure its supply chain was protected from Hexagon's continued payment abuse. In most similar cases, the supply chain tends to become the collateral damage in the employer's poor payment practices.
Now, Providence Builders, from what I can work out, they're a couple of, they're no Balfour Beatty, they're not Kia, they are small, independent, couple of working class lads who have built up a company who probably thought they hit the jackpot when they signed this contract with Hexagon Housing. Now, Hexagon weren't paying them, so these guys are sending out their fellas, their men, their women, their team, their workforce to fix repairs on Hexagon homes. They're going into people's homes, they're fixing the homes, they're having to perhaps buy tools, equipment, they're perhaps having to buy parts. Probably no doubt that they're having to buy goods to carry out these repairs. And then they pay their guys, they pay the national insurance, their pensions, and then they're not getting paid by Hexagon Housing. Now, this has a huge impact on your small traders. Cash flow is everything. I myself was a self-employed carpet cleaner back in the early 2000s, and there was an estate agent who gave me loads of work, but I never paid, and I realised I was getting lots of work with them because they'd already gone through every other carpet cleaner in the town. When you're suddenly having to chase them, I got up to about $5,000 in the end. That's nothing to them, but for me as an independent, that's keeping my van on the road. That was keeping my stock supplied. That was providing my leaflets. It was providing my income. And when you're working almost full time for one provider who isn't then paying you, it's worse if you've got costs the same. If you've got costs to outlay on top of that, your cash flow's gone down. That is going to be crippling. Now, what's worse, Providence should have been paid. If you provide a service and you're on a 30-day, 90-day agreement, whatever that is, your client, Hexagon Housing in this, has to pay you. They have to pay you. And if they don't, they've already breached the contract. So when these boys at Providence came out and said, look, we can't afford to do this. We don't want to keep this. We're getting out of the contract underneath the clause, and I'll show you the legal stuff so you can read all of that. When they said, well, look, we're coming out of this contract because you're not paying us, you're actually breaching your side of it. Rather than Hexagon Housing going, yeah, sorry, boys, we've let you down. We understand. They did, what many housing associations now do, which is revert to legal action because they've got the lawyers behind them. They've got the funding. They've got the bigger pockets and they've got the lawyers. So they took to court. And on the first round, poor old Providence were told they can't leave their contract. So now they had court costs, plus they had to keep working for a company that wasn't paying them for the work they did. They appealed it. And right on. Good for you, boys. They appealed it and then they had it overturned. They won. They won on the appeal. So, look, Hexagon should have paid them. They should have let them out of the contract at the first and saved legal costs, because now residents of Hexagon Housing are having to pay for, I assume, certainly the legal action from the appeal, which is going to run into absolute thousands. So, should have paid them. Shouldn't have gone on. And now what they should do is say, dear residents, we appreciate that in a cost of living crisis, we all have to tighten our belts, and we failed. We failed to pay our repairs guys who were carrying out the repairs. As such, we're now going to have to focus on emergency repairs only, and we're putting out to contract anyone who can come and work for us, on a subcontract level to repair our homes.
Financial trouble ahead.
As we already know, many housing providers are struggling financially. And the annual reports are all being published. They're all coming out. The last one I read, A2 Dominion, who are reporting a loss of 21 million in 2024. So that's going to cause worry to their residents. They're also selling off assets. They've currently got 3.5 billion in fixed assets, but they are selling off dilapidated stock, of course, because this is the only way that these housing providers can keep money on their books. My own provider, Green Square Accord, is still actively selling off homes, and now they're running out of homes to sell. Service charges are all going through the roof again. So we understand that, you can't finance it now, and this is a problem we've all got to deal with. But how are you going to communicate that to your residents? Why aren't we proactively, as a housing provider, why aren't you proactively saying, here's where we are, this is what we need, this is the expectations? And again, back to Hexagon, the statement, had it been true, was an honest one, and one that perhaps residents could appreciate. I think we need to see some CEOs coming out. Hey, happy to have you come on here on the Housing Sector podcast to explain to your residents why you're failing, why financially their homes aren't going to be repaired. Any of that, they'd be welcome. But you also have your own platforms. So I think we need some honesty. Rather than seeing you brag about stuff, we need you to come out and be honest and open and say, look, this is the shortfalling. This is how we're going to plug this gap. At the minute, you don't appear to know how you're going to plug the gap. Apart from selling off dilapidated stocks and increasing rent and service charges, you don't have a plan in place. What's more is you're spending your time, your social media happy. As we talked about earlier, you are promoting this image of yourself, which is false. Perhaps it's because you're in fear of being taken over by the private sector coming in and going, you know what, we're just going to buy you out, get rid of all your staff and start again. Well, they'll keep in the ones that are working, the customer service and the repairs team. Get rid of your senior management, let's start again. They failed, let's start again. Personally, again, I sit on the fence. I think there needs to be some input from the private sector. However, I grew up underneath Thatcher, so I've seen things being privatised. But I also worked at BT, and I know that there were people there who I knew who'd worked when it wasn't a private company, when it was public, and they said they had cushy afternoons. They worked all morning, and then in the afternoon they were done. So it's not always, and look at Thames Water, it doesn't always work out, but we need some funding, we need something in place to stop the hemorrhaging of 21 million from one housing provider alone. We'll do another housing sector podcast where we look at the financial state of a few providers. Let's look at some of the big ones, some of the mediums and some of the small ones, so we can get a nice sort of reference to work out how bad the sector is doing when it comes to the finances. But we need some online integrity. We need to hear something from the housing providers. People can accept if you aren't able to come round and fix a bin store, which, let's face it, my own provider couldn't do when they had money. If you can't do that simple, then we need to know about it in advance, because when you don't come round, there are increased calls into your customer service team. There is increased annoyance from your residents going, why aren't you fixing this? If you can't fix it, and you can state why you can't fix it, is the reason that you're not stating, because I could then go through my service charge and going, but you're not providing that service, so why should I pay for it? Who knows? Because there is no internet integrity.
There must be online integrity.
It does leave a bad taste in the mouth when housing providers boast about things that just aren't true. They celebrate stuff that is a way of glossing over their failures. So rather than being truthful and open and honest, as we've already shown and discussed, we hide it, we show it, we go, oh yeah, we're great, we're this, we're that, we're great. We're speaking at this event. Our CEO is speaking at this event to highlight how important it is that we do this right, whilst not doing it right. So look, there's a lot of bragging, and award ceremonies are another. You wonder why residents are so antagonised by award ceremonies. Well, that's because you pay money, housing providers pay money to nominate themselves and get a table at this award ceremony so they can boast about how great they're doing. No one denies that your staff deserve a night out, and I think it's great for some of the, particularly the entry-level staff and some of your mid-level staff. I mean, it's great for them to have award ceremonies, and it gives them an incentive. But when we've just got CEOs and my own communication team paying for their own award, it leaves a bad taste. Now, is this a cultural thing within the housing associations? I'm starting to think it might be, because it's a behaviour that we see repeated across the board. Now, this isn't a personal attack. There is Honey, Hony. She sits on many boards. We will show some of them here. Sits on boards and promotes herself as someone who advises housing association boards. And she has started podcasting. Good luck to her. Someone else who has started off podcasting a similar time to myself. Now, when I got about 3 or 4 weeks in, I started to get lots of emails from people. We can get you loads of engagement. You pay a small fee and we will promote yours. We'll get your subscription, your subscriber list up. We'll get you likes. We'll get you views. The housing sector is built on integrity. If I can't be open and honest and truthful, then I've got nothing. All right? I'm not from your sector. I'm an outsider as a resident looking in and going, this ain't right. So I have built this platform on being open, honest, and telling the truth. Just tell the truth. Tell it as it is. And we know the backlash that has cost me. Court case arrests and independents going, well, it can't be seen to be getting on board with you. And the fact that, a lot of people contact me privately and help run this podcast. So the last thing I'd want to do is buy subscribers. The last thing I'd want to do is pay for my content to be viewed so it looked better. And we've also got to face the fact that Green Square Accord are constantly trying to get my content taken down through the courts, through police action, through reporting me to YouTube. And so I have to be careful. Not only do I want to be, but I have to be. So it's about integrity here. And I have, as of today, the 30th of September, 75 subscribers. And God bless you all. Thank you very much indeed. And my videos tracked. I get 100, 120 views on the videos. I tend to get a little bit more on the audio. And I've got the website, and it creates content for the housing sector website and my Green Square Accord residence website. I'm happy with the way things are going. The other thing I'm happy about is with each episode I get a little bit better, a little bit slicker. The animations become better, the cutscenes, the intros, me talking to the camera like this, which isn't scripted. I have points that I need to cover off, but this is all raw as it is, unfiltered, as you can probably tell from a lot of the content. It's honest, it's open, it's truthful. You get it as it is. And that's growing. My platforms are growing, and they need to grow because we've already established that the mainstream media aren't sharing the true state of affairs. They're not publishing what we know to be truthful of the housing associations, and the housing associations themselves aren't always promoting a true image of themselves. So you can imagine my surprise when Honey, who I openly supported as in her election campaign to become vice president of Child Institute of Housing, or whatever it was she was running for. I'll put that up here as well so you can see that. No harm. I'm not, I was on board with her. I liked the journey that she had been on, the way that she had built up her career. It was disappointing to see her say, hey, I've got over 1,000 subscribers. I'm very disappointed, very surprised. I thought, wow, what great work. Well, it turned out that I subscribed to her channel. I knew that she'd had 52. So in a day, she'd put on over 1,000. By the end of the following day, she'd had over 2,000. And by the end of the third day, she had over 3,000. So I saw the message on the LinkedIn, and I saw a lot of the independents going, hey, this is great. This is brilliant. Well done, you. And I thought, do you really mean that? Surely this is, at best, it's spam. It's a bot. Someone's attacked. So I said, look, I'm worried for your account in the comments. Perhaps you should contact YouTube and see what's going on there, because I think these aren't real engagements. And the sort of telltale sign of that is that your videos aren't being viewed by anywhere near 3,000. So why would you subscribe to a channel whose video you've not viewed? Why would you not like? If you're a subscriber, likes don't equate with the subscriptions that they should do. None of it rung true. She didn't like or respond to mine, so I private messaged her and said, look, I think you need to look into this. And her response was, that, she's asked some friends and family, and she is paying a small fee to a marketing company because she doesn't have the time. Well, I don't have the time either. We're all very busy, but you got to let your channel grow organically. Otherwise, YouTube might take it down. And again, when she's got people like, dear old Tom, who's going, it's great. It's probably going to be my last podcast where I speak about the sector I'm so passionate about. It's probably be my last hurrah. It won't be. But when you've got someone like him putting his reputation on there, and then you look at it and go, well, he's got about 170 views, but you've got 3,000 subscribers. It doesn't tally. It doesn't ring true. And then we look at Honey's background and go, well, she's advising boards. She sits on boards. So this is the culture of the housing associations. And this is disappointing. And this is what this whole podcast is about. We need integrity. If you can't be honest, open, and transparent, you got nothing. Internet integrity. It's what's needed. Let's wrap this podcast up.
Final thoughts.
So there you have it. Another podcast. Thank you for persevering this long. For all those who's still watching, why not give it a like and why not subscribe? We really do need to work together on this. That, as I say time and time again, it's your stock, but there are homes. And if you can't manage them, what we need you to do is to let us know. If we really are in this together, as so many of you claim, and all the other generic slogans that are used, our customers are the heart of everything we do. We're here for our customers. This is the customers that we love. If that's true, start treating us with a little bit of respect. Start showing us some honesty. Perhaps we can work a way to together navigate through what is undoubtedly some very choppy waters. We need to work together, and in order to work together, we need some honesty and we need some transparency. You need to do it the housing sector way. Okay, look, Honey, thank you for your invite to come on your podcast. As I said to you in the message, I can't come on a podcast with you, and I don't really want you to come on this podcast until you've sorted out. I cannot tarnish my reputation, certainly my YouTube account, until you've sorted out the issues with your own, and I hope you get that sorted out. We all make mistakes, and I think by paying for fake engagement, you've made a mistake. Hexagon, great start, really great start with that. That's the sort of message to residents that we need. However, shameful behaviour that promoted it. It's a shame that wasn't an honest one. I'd like to see some housing providers getting together with residents to say, we need to work with you. We need you to work with us. We need to support this. And again, we need to get back to that locality model that housing providers claim to have, where you have local tradesmen working within the area, cut down on those petrol costs, have people who understand the community, who have the account adjacents where they can regularly get the stuff, or whomever. There are other building merchants out there, but who can work within the communities so they can serve them. Let's bring costs down that way. If it's not working for you in-house, then we need to rethink how we do this. The only way we can do it is by being open and honest. Residents, keep sharing things with me. If it's being hidden, being ignored and hidden, this is your platform to help get things out in the open. Only when you're open and honest, and the housing providers are open and honest, can we truly find out where we are. Let's get the state of play so we can make the course correction. Look, I've flapped my lips long enough now. I want to get out a GSA one today if I can as well. So we've got a lot going on. Thank you to everyone. Thank you for your support. If you need anything, if you have anything that you want to share, it's ben@housingsector.co.uk. And to my background guys, my guys in the background, my insiders, thank you. Thank you very much indeed. I can't name you yet. And I get that. I really do get that. But please, let's put it on the record. The support that you are providing, the insight and the guidance that you are providing is immensely valued. And you know who you all are. So thank you very much indeed. God bless you all and stay strong, stay safe. And if you can, stay dry.
Thank you all for watching this episode of the Housing Sector Podcast. We truly appreciate your support and engagement. If you found value in our discussion today, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel, leave a comment, and share this episode with others who might be interested. Your feedback helps us grow and reach more people. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll continue to dive into the important issues affecting our communities.